Hello, everyone, and welcome to, once again, our weekly football fix here at Florida State. Our appreciation to the FSU Bookstore for their sponsorship, and that's where you can get all your FSU gear right now. Just because we're not practicing right now, school's not here on campus, doesn't mean you can't go get your Seminole gear, getting ready for the next season. You can get all that merchandise at shopfsu.com. That's shopfsu.com. And people are buying Seminole stuff like crazy in anticipation for the season. I know we're getting a little bit more excited about everything, but let me introduce our guests right now. And I'll start with Coach Chris Thompson, of course, who's our deputy head coach and our tight ends coach. Coach, we appreciate you joining us right now. Coach Norvell's sending him your way, and I understand these chats are becoming quite the norm for the coaches. They've already been on a couple this morning. It's already probably more than a couple. But also with us is Alex Atkins, of course, who's in charge of our offensive line, and we'll get to their resumes sort of in just a moment, talk to them some more. But I will update you a little bit. As many of you know, it was breaking news last night that the NCAA has voted to allow some voluntary workouts on campuses. We don't know when that's going to happen for Florida State. We don't know when it's going to happen for ACC schools. We did start testing our student athletes, about 40 football players and about 20 staff members on Wednesday, I guess it was, under the stadium, testing for COVID-19. And those were individuals that were not going to go out of town for Memorial Day or who weren't expecting out-of-town guests. So we are starting to get, again, it seems like it's just little stair steps. We're starting to get a little bit more excited about at least a chance for the student athletes to get on campus and work out in our facilities. Not quite there yet. But the guys who are more anxious than I am for that are the two guys that are joining us right now. And Coach Thompson, I think we'll start off with you. And I'll remind our fans, of course, that he came to us from TCU after serving as offensive line coach there for 3 years. Prior to that, he was a head coach at Abilene Christian and has been at Arizona State, Texas Tech, and Central Arkansas. And he's got a really unique perspective that we'll get to in just a minute. But thanks for joining us, Coach. And I know it's odd times for all of us, but nobody's more anxious to see these guys working out than you are, I know.
No doubt. We've been meeting with these guys like this virtually for so long since spring break, and that's really been good. We've been able to get a lot of the concepts across to the guys, and they're doing a great job learning those big picture. But man, we're ready to get on the grass, and when everything's safe to do so, we just excited to get out there with these guys and put the practical part of learning it on the grass to use.
Well, I kind of teased it just a moment ago, but you really have a unique perspective on Coach Norvell in that you worked with him previously, and you coached with him, or coached him rather, or coached on the team that he was playing on. Can you describe what Coach Norvell was like as a student athlete and what it means to be working with him again?
Well, as a student athlete back at University of Central Arkansas, he was the first part of that, the student part, he was a guy that was very serious about his academics, did really well, excelled in the classroom at a high level, which he always pushes our guys to do. And, on the field, he was one of those, disciplined, smart, tough type players, and he could run. He wasn't just a guy that relied on the intangible things. He also had some measure of talent as a receiver. He could run. I think he finished, as all-time leading receiver in the history of that program. I think somebody surpassed him since, but he's, he put his heart and soul into it, just like he does coaching, and it's been no surprise to see him do so well in coaching just because he's taken that same approach.
Could you see the fire in him when he was a player? He said he knew he wanted to be a coach ever really since he started playing football, but in particularly when he was at Central Arkansas, he realized, hey, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, you could see the fire, and you could see the, he was, although he was always respectful of the coaches, he always had something in his mind of, maybe we can tweak this route and do it just a little bit different to help us get open, in a little bit better way. And he was always thinking forward like that. So no surprise that, that he's excelled in coaching, and you see a lot of those elements in our offense. We do a lot of things where, the receivers, they have a lot of flexibility in the things that they do and their route adjustments. And those are a lot of things that he saw as a player that he thought were beneficial, and he's incorporated into his system.
Well, obviously, it thinks a lot of you with the titles you have and carry, and the trust he's put in you, and what he's having you do with the program. You're also working with Coach Dillingham for the first time, and I know you all have only had what we get 4 practices in, 3 practices in, but there's a lot more. I mean, y'all are with each other all day long and well into the night. So I know you know what it's like working with him.
Yeah, and actually, Coach Dillingham was when we were at Arizona State. He was a high school coach when we first got there in the area, but he was around the office so much as a high school coach that we almost felt like he was part of the staff. And then when we did have an opportunity in an entry level role in the college game to put him in it, we did. So I actually got to work with him. He was a graduate assistant at Arizona State with us. So I think at least a couple of years with him in that role. So. And really, he's one of the reasons that I came here as well. My relationship with Coach Norvell, obviously goes way back and a high trust level and know what I'm getting there. But also the opportunity to work with Coach Dillingham was something that I always had hoped to get when he left to go to Memphis. And so it's been great working with him. He's a different guy, man. He's smart, but he's also has a great sense of humor. It's a great working environment every day. And, we get a lot of stuff done, but we enjoy doing it and just enjoy coming to work every day with that guy.
You get a real sense of that. We, the staff, get a sense of that in terms of you guys on the coaching staff. And it really seems like there's a lot of energy and a lot of, just plain fun being had. And that's important. Sometimes that gets lost in everything. It can be stressful enough without adding more stress to what you got to face. But what are you, and I know you've not had a chance to probably think about this too much, or maybe you've had to think about it too much, but what are you most excited about the upcoming season?
We had position meetings with our guys this morning, and, I've just tried to keep the vision in front of them from time to time of we are doing all this for a purpose. And you have to remind them of that because this is a very, very challenging situation for them. This is unprecedented in college football. We've never seen this. So it's challenging for coaches, but it's really more challenging for the players. They don't know what to expect. They don't know how it's going to unfold. So what I'm most excited about is to see the response to that. They've responded really well since spring break, since all this went down. But now, there appears to be some sort of transition about to occur with college football. And, what is that going to be? And then how do we handle it? And then, a long season ahead of you with challenges that we've never faced in terms of testing and being safe and doing it, safely as possible. Are there going to be fans? How many? All those things. Are there going to be an interruption? I'm just excited to see how the kids handle that. That's it. I mean, any season you go into, there's just so many different challenges, but this one's going to be different. And so I'm excited to see how they handle that. I'm excited to get in dope, man. I want to get out there and, for years in college football history, you see the tradition and the history of this program. I'm very excited to be a part of that and get the season going in that way.
Well, once you get done looking at Osceola and Renegade and the fans in that first game, you're going to focus in on those tight ends. And boy, that position's changed a lot in the last 15 years. It's changed a great deal. And people are calling it all different things. Teams that claim they don't have a tight end do have a tight end. They just call them something different. And it really takes a unique individual to be successful there. You've got to be a blocker. You're to the running game, you're a blocker. To the passing game, you're a receiver. To the quarterback, you're his best friend. And it's really a challenging position for somebody to learn, particularly coming from high school, because a lot of them aren't used that way.
No, you're right. They're not. And it is a challenging position. And it's really challenging in Coach Norvell's offense because, we force them to learn all the different potential spots, whether it's in the backfield, attached on the line of scrimmage, in the slot, and even outside. They'll line up in all those different spots. So they don't really just learn what they do. They learn the whole concept. And fortunately, we have some very smart guys here at Florida State, and we've recruited some guys that are very smart. And that's just, that's a prerequisite to that position. When we recruit a guy's got to be smart and got to be able to put the whole thing together. And like you said, I mean, they got to put their hand in the dirt and be an offensive lineman and get dirty and do the things that it takes to be successful in the run game, but then, figure out how to maneuver and get themselves open in the pass game. So it's a great challenge, and I'm excited about coaching it, and excited about the guys that I have.
Well, we haven't had a chance, obviously, an opportunity to see what we're going to look like yet, except for those 3 practices. And Coach Atkins he'll probably speak to this more directly when we get to him too. But that relationship between an offensive tackle and a tight end is they really have to work together. There has to be chemistry is probably the wrong word, but there has to be a knowledge of what's going on there.
No, there does. And depending on what type of system you run, there's either more or less of that. But in our system, there's a huge amount of communication and working together that does occur, whether it's in the run game or in the pass protection. In the meeting this morning, we were talking about some of the different things and the protections that we have to do to be able to work with the offensive line and to help those guys do their job. So, and when I coached the offensive line position, it was always valuable for me to have a tight end coach that understood all the communication, all the calls. And that's what I'm really super excited about working with Alex in that way, because I think our system can really take advantage of what defenses give you if the guys know what they're doing and the communication is right. So that's going to be a fun process to go throughout this season with.
Well, one of the unfortunate things with the situation we've got in terms of the COVID, keeping everybody on video screens instead of out there, is our fans and boosters haven't had a chance to know you guys too well yet. And that's part of what we try and do here as well. And towards that end, let them know what outside of football are your interests. You have anything unique, or what are you all about outside of football?
Man, college football is so, it keeps you so busy that in reality, you don't really have time to do a lot of things that maybe I do love to fish. I just don't get the opportunity to do it that much. I'm hoping that Odell will take us on a fishing trip here at some point.
That's your guy.
Well, I'm recruiting a kid in South Georgia, and he sent me a picture of a catfish about 3 feet long yesterday, and so that makes you want to get out and do that. But other than that, I love to read. I love to read. Really like learning about people, their biographies, their stories, especially as it relates to coaching and sports. I'm reading. I'm about halfway through one of Coach Bowden's books right now, and he's telling a lot of stories about the former players. And I saw the term Odell and Deion Sanders came in the solid gold recruiting class. I mean, that was what they're. Stuff like that's fascinating to me. I love that. So I do like to read. That's probably what I do the most in my spare time.
Well, before we switch over, what has surprised you most about FSU or Tallahassee since you've been here?
The biggest thing probably that, when you take a college job nowadays, typically you don't get to see where you're moving to.
Right.
The coach calls you and says, "Hey, are you interested? Let's work this out." Okay, boom. And you have no idea where you're going. I mean, you might have been to that place recruiting or something, but in this case, I'd never been to Tallahassee. I'm really surprised at just the beauty of the landscape. Texas is a little bit more flatlands and plains, and at least where I'm from in North Texas. So, the neighborhood, the house I bought literally has about 20 huge oak trees on it. And, I've never really lived in, so the beauty of this place geographically is what surprised me a little bit, probably the most.
Well, I got some bass ponds and lakes out here too, so we'll introduce you to those as well. Coach Atkins, he's got a little Game of Thrones going on over there, kind of a Game of Thrones background going, but I know you do whatever you can to get your attention to your players, and we're so happy to have you with us. Of course, came from UNC Charlotte, where he was offensive coordinator and offensive line coach last year, and then he was assistant head coach and offensive line coach at Tulane for about 3 years before that, and been at Georgia Southern, Chattanooga, Marshall, and UT Martin. And you have a tough job on any football team from Pee Wee through NFL, and if they ever played senior football, it'd be tough there. That offensive line is a whole lot of moving parts, and if one of them goes bad, they all go bad, and everybody's happy to tell you that. But having worked with Coach Norvell before, what are some of your initial impressions, having never worked, with Coach Norvell before, some initial impressions on him and how he manages the challenges of working with student athletes?
Well, even before I worked with Coach Norvell, I would always use his offense. I would break down his season every year, just the unique things he did on offense and how he was able to take advantage of what defenses were doing and also dictate a lot of it too, which is which is awesome to see where he dictates a lot of what the defense has to adjust to him. So, you know, we were in the same conference. I was at Tulane when he was at Memphis, so we faced each other. We were on the same side. So I got to see it in person also a couple of times, which was not too fun. But, you know, just a mastermind organization, detailed. And I was already stealing a lot of his information, so now I get to do it, you know, to his face instead of behind his back.
There you go. Well, it's pretty widely acknowledged that one of the toughest positions to recruit in high school is offensive lineman. I'm talking about in terms of evaluation. It's very difficult to really establish what a high school lineman is going to be like in college. And what do you attribute that to? What are some of the reasons for that? And then the second part of that equation would be, we know that Florida is talent rich in terms of high school players. How about in terms of offensive line prospects in particular?
Yeah, it's
no names, by the way.
Of course not. It's unique. It's a unique position because it is a total projection. So one thing that's unique about our staff, we got Coach Thompson, we got Coach Norvell, we have guys and Coach Dillingham who loves offensive linemen. So you try to rely on experience of guys you had in the past that compare to the guys you're looking at now. And, you know, certain set of abilities, Coach Storms, you know, the strength coach is also a huge part of that. And so you try to take, you know, different characteristics, different attributes and character traits, and you try to, you know, find the guy that's going to, you know, project into a phenomenal football player. Of course, some guys you come to film and they jump right at you, like, no doubt he's an NFL player. But it's not many of those guys each year. Like, even when you ask a normal person that goes to the grocery store every day and goes shopping, how many human beings do you run into that can play offensive line at the highest level of college football? There's not many that you even see on a daily basis. So it is a projection, unique position. So you got to rely on, you know, athletic ability, upside, approach to the game. There's quite a few factors, actually.
Well, I don't question that. And then speak to the talent level in Florida in particular. I know even when you were at your previous stops, Tulane and UNC Charlotte in particular, you obviously tried to recruit Florida as well as most of the schools, not only in the Southeast, but it seems like around the country. Everybody wants to cross that state line.
Oh, yeah. And Tallahassee is in a unique place. You know, you still have the talent-rich Florida, which has more players than you can fill out probably every college football team with just the state of Florida alone. But you're also right, you know, 30 minutes an hour away from South Georgia. You know, like Coach was talking about the person he was talking to yesterday. So you're in a unique deal where you're right there touching Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, and you also have Florida. So you have, you know, a lot of places you can kind of recruit as in-state. Now, Florida in particular, you know, they get a bad rap as far as offensive linemen, but there are some good offensive linemen in the state. You know, and what I've found is they're leaner and athletic, and that kind of just goes with the stereotypical view is when you come out of Florida, you can run, whether big or small, you can run a little bit.
Well, you watch a football game at NFL or collegiate level. If you see an offensive line, you know, you see a player get injured, you're always concerned. You see an offensive lineman get injured, the whole team's concerned. You know, it just seems like the loss of an offensive lineman or having to shuffle somebody on the offensive line really is a challenge. And speak to why that is. Why is it so difficult if you remove, you know, the standard starter out of the lineup? Why is it such a challenge to bounce back from that?
Well, two reasons. The first one, you know, what we talked about earlier, is just not too many human beings on the earth that can do it, and also continuity. You know, it's one. In our group, we say we're the only unit on the field, meaning the left tackle has to communicate with the right tackle. So there is a harmony or continuity that happens when you're next to the same guy for so long. Even if you look at the NFL of offensive linemen and that are able to stay together the longest usually have the most success. So you're trying to build that continuity, getting used to each other. I know how fast he'll get to this double team. I know he knows the calls, or even to the point where the guy next to you knows what you're thinking. You know, so that continuity does get thrown off, but I mean, you're going to have that, so you just got to have the next guy ready to go.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of football fans realize how much is involved communication-wise, not only between the offensive linemen, but with the quarterback calling the play, even the running backs at times. There's a lot of adjustment or reliance on each other to achieve whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, that's an understatement. like even on these Zoom meetings, you know, when you got all 5 guys with the mute off, it gets a little chaotic just because of all the communication. And so we got to make sure unmute them and go one at a time because you're right. People don't realize how much talking.
Well, you talk about, sorry to talk over you there. I hope our fans are getting the appreciation that I am for how much you obviously enjoy coaching the offensive line. It's a big smile comes on your face when you start talking about coaching.
Man, and Coach Thompson, you know, he's the veteran O-line coach, and it's funny because I'm enjoying that offensive line play is getting his light shined upon it because, you know, even when I played, I know when Coach Thompson was coaching, was the head coach back there, nobody really talked about O-line play. It was always the guy scoring those touchdowns, and it is good to see how important the offensive line is, and also I think, you know, I'm a little biased toward O-linemen. They're usually the toughest, you know. They can withstand a lot. So, you know, I'm glad that the focus has been upon when a team is not succeeding, people look to the O-line, which I like because those guys are built for that. They have the character. They're usually great leaders outside of the football field because they can handle those type of adversity and things like that. So it's really a bright spot of offensive line right now in our times in football. Yeah,
that's an excellent point. I think that TV announcers have done a lot better job of that over the last 2 years. I give Kirk Herbstreit a lot of credit for that. He's the first guy I can remember that can talk about the tailback on the 12-yard gain without talking about the pulling guard that made the great block or the backside tackle or whatnot. And everybody's kind of follows suit with that and give credit where credit's due. And sometimes they point out the missed blocks too, but I guess that's all part of the game. All part of the game, huh?
I love when those highlights pop up on Twitter, and you know, Florida State highlights. You see those great touchdown runs and catches, and then I don't ever see that camera zoom to the tackle that's blocking that defensive end. You know, that doesn't happen much.
When the tailback gets over to the sidelines, I'm sure he goes over there and taps him and says, "It's a nice block." It just doesn't make it to film. All right, tell us about yourself outside of football. What are your interests?
Very similar to Coach Thompson. I mean, you know, you become very family oriented when you're not working because, you know, in this career we love working, so it's not a chore. You know, we enjoy coming to the office every day, talking to the players and developing them in all aspects of their life. So when you get away, you know, you become very family oriented. You know, just me and my wife, so we spend a lot of time together. I enjoy, you know, like shooting ski. I enjoy guns and things like that. I just like wasting ammo basically because I don't hunt much. I just like to go shoot things that don't move. Because I'm not scared of them coming back on me. You know? So I like to shoot targets and things like that. I also enjoy reading. I got my degree in history, so I love nonfiction. You know, reading, and it really helped me because you get a different view of perspective. Because we all kind of get caught up in our perspective of how we see things, but reading historical and different, you know, not only religions, but ways of life and backgrounds and things like that kind of gives you an inside view of how people see their truth through their eyes. And I really enjoy that.
Yeah, excellent point. And then same question for you. What has been the most interesting or unusual or surprising thing that about Tallahassee that you weren't expecting?
Well, you know, you come to a place like Florida State that's love and passionate about football and a lot of history and won a bunch of football games. You expect kind of an atmosphere of, hey, take care of business, or we don't like you kind of. But it's been like open arms, really family oriented. Tallahassee is a small place it's like a larger city with a small town feel, where you feel connected with everybody, even my neighbors. You know, I moved in and, you know, I show up, there's a little flower on my doorstep, you know, welcome to Tallahassee with you know, so it still has that southern charm and that small town feel where it's embracing and that's been awesome.
Well, I can't thank y'all enough, Coach Thompson and Coach Atkins. Thanks for taking the time to let our boosters and season ticket holders and fans know a little bit about what makes you tick and what we're doing right now. It's good to hear that the team is responding so positively as you suspicion it will. We're excited about some of the changes seem to be relaxing a little bit. We're hoping for more information on that maybe in the next week or so. We did test, as I mentioned, some of our players, the ones that aren't leaving town, so we're excited about that. Thanks so much for not only joining us here, but being a part of this staff. You have really brought a lot of energy and a lot of positivity to the program, and we're all feeding off of it and can't wait to see you up here in the offices and watching those players come into the weight room. I know we had to chain the weight room because they were trying to sneak in, and that's a good sign, I guess.
That is a good problem.
But we'll be back next week with the Football Fix. And once again, it's brought to you by FSU Bookstore, and you can get your shopping done online at shopfsu.com. It's where you can get all your Seminole merchandise. And thanks again, Coach Thompson. Thanks again, Coach Atkins. And with that, we'll call it the Football Fix this week. And go Noles.
Go Noles.